Hi, it's G from Native Speakers Academy again, and welcome to another edition or episode of Useful Stuff. It's hot here, so if you can hear some background noise, it's probably the fans spinning around to try and keep things cool in our Saharan Slovak summer. These are supplementary sessions for students of Native Speakers Academy, our holistic language school. And this is, I think, information which I hope you can put to some good use in your life. So, that's the introduction. Let's get into the theme today, which is what happens when your brain doesn't sleep. And according to Dr. Mercola, one of the leading lights, I think, in the world on holistic health, you need an average of 8 hours sleep a night, which is kind of my dream, to have 8 hours sleep a night. And it's something that I haven't had for a long time. There are probably a lot of people who haven't had that for a long period of time. In fact, last night, I think I got 3 hours of sleep last night. I couldn't sleep, lying in my bed, all these thoughts spinning around my head. Anyway, that brings us nicely back round to our theme. What happens when your brain doesn't sleep? So let's have a look at this together. Part 1, lost memories. What does it say there? The hippocampus, a moon-shaped structure in the temporal lobe, that's the light blue color in the picture, exhibits a distinct pattern of neural activity when the waking mind encodes or learns new information. Scientists believe our brain later replays the same activity pattern while we're sleeping to help the information stick. So basically, as we sleep, our brains are filtering through and repeating through the important things that have happened during the day. Like a CD burner would burn something onto a disk, it is ingraining the information into our mind. And if we lose sleep, we also lose long-term memories at the same time. It's also interesting in terms of memory, how much we remember and how much we forget. On average, we forget about 80% of the information that we experience within 24 hours. It's not that we forget it totally, we just ignore it because we are absorbing everything through the senses all of the time from our environment. And if we were to focus on everything that we experienced all of the time, then we would go a little bit crazy. So yes, it's important to be where you are, but at the same time you need to selectively filter what is important for you. Next, we have false memories. The sleep-starved brain may fail to encode memories successfully in the first place, thanks to altered function in the hippocampus, as well as prefrontal cortex and parietal lobe regions. A little bit difficult to see the different colors there. One study found that people are more likely to incorporate misinformation into memories of events observed after a night without sleep. So I'm guessing that what's happening here is you're not burning into your brain the reality that you experienced, and so what you have is a kind of chaos, confusion, a mishmash of concepts within your own head. I've even heard it said that people who stay awake for longer periods of time, this includes days staying awake, eventually start seeing things burst into flames and catch fire, even though that's not actually happening. It's quite serious, if you ask me. And so we continue. Moving on. Anger. Sleep loss primes us to focus on negative experiences, misinterpret facial expressions, and pick fights. Emotional volatility may partly be a product of interrupted communication between brain regions. And fMRI of the well-rested brain shows connectivity between the amygdala, a limbic system structure critical to emotional processing, and the medial prefrontal cortex, which helps regulate feelings, i.e. tells us to chill, helps us relax. And so there is communication happening between all of these parts of the brain all of the time. And I've often had this wonder in my mind, where does a thought come from? Where does a thought come from? Can you put your finger on a thought? You can't. It's such a wondrous abstract principle and context. To try to realize that there's a certain magic within our elements of creativity, thought, and ideas. Oh, of course, you can implant ideas through marketing and bypassing the frontal brain is what hypnotists do. But there's still an element of human creativity that's unpredictable. Anyway, that just covers up my bad reading of this passage. Sleep deprivation cuts the connections, or these connections, letting your revved up amygdala and your mood run wild. So basically, the brain becomes out of control. And this is also interesting if you compare it with something that I read a little while ago, which was people who are awake later at night appear to be more creative, according to some studies. Personally, myself, I'm more creative in the morning, but apparently there's a great amount of creativity that happens between 10 o'clock in the evening and 2 o'clock in the morning, and I don't just mean if you go out drinking. So it's got to depend on a lot of other things as well. It's got to depend on your state of mind during the day, your relationship with people around about you, the environment you live in. Is it an inner city? Are you out in the countryside somewhere? So all of these environmental factors are still going to have a strong impact on the brain and how the brain functions. It's the epigenetics that is an activation of the genetic structure that we have within our bodies. Moving on, cerebral shrinkage. Healthy adults getting poor sleep lose volume in the frontal, temporal, and is it parietal? Can't quite see that word. I think it's parietal lobe. One study has shown, or one study showed. Researchers don't yet understand if sleep loss causes shrinkage or if the shrinkage causes sleep loss. Yeah, that's a very interesting understanding of cause and effect. Just because two things are related does not mean that one is the cause of the other. So keep that in mind as well. There can be an element of fallacy that comes into that argument. Moving on, slurred speech, the temporal lobe, the brain region associated with language processing, is highly active in well-rested people, but inactive in their exhausted and Enunciation challenged counterparts. There's a great phrase. Enunciation challenged counterparts. Get my own pronunciation right, and that'll be just sweet. So, as we need to train, we need to rest, and the rest is growth. To think of the brain essentially as a muscle of the body. I've even heard the body described as a muscle of the brain, and so think about the relationship between those two things. If you're physically training your body, you do need rest periods in there for growth and recovery, and if you're working with your brain, you want to chill out and relax as well. Watch a sitcom, read a book, sit under a tree, have a glass of lemonade with real lemon. Things to think about. Moving on. Impaired wit. When you skimp, jump over, only have a little bit of sleep. When you skimp on sleep, the clever commentary may not flow so easily. Sleep loss affects cognitive processes like divergent thinking, which helps us switch topics nimbly during conversation. Scientists found that the activity in the inferior frontal gyrus increases when sleep-deprived people tried to list uses for different objects, suggesting the brain draws on divergent thinking to compensate for strained cognitive function. I wonder how they find people for these experiments. I wonder how they carry out these experiments. What do? They just keep people awake for long periods of time and then just ask them to try to perform certain tasks? Interesting. So a kind of parallel thinking or divergent thinking is difficult when you are not relaxed, I would say. And if I compare that with myself and my friends, I think that my friends who I would say are more relaxed than me have a greater ability for this kind of divergent thinking. This would be the ability, for example, say to make a joke in the middle of conversation, or to present an idea from an alternative viewpoint. Moving on, we've got chronic binges. Sleep loss corresponds with decreased activity in the frontal lobe, I believe, it's very lightly written there, which controls decision making, and more activity in the amygdala, a key player in fear detection. Together, these neural changes create a brain mechanism that dulls judgment and ratchets up or increases desire. The ideal mind state for scoffing down fistfuls of bacon. Yeah, comfort food. You need to have that relaxed state, that positive feeling that you don't have, and you search for a solution through food. In fact, if you haven't done this, I recommend looking very, very carefully at your own diet, what you eat, and how that impacts everything that happens in the world around about you. Because I've noticed that sometimes when I'm eating, it sort of has a joyous, happy-like effect, and it's like some kind of drug which is making me feel better, and it's covering something. You know, obesity is a cover for other psychological and historical problems. Moving on. let's look at hallucinations. The well-rested brain filters stimuli, noise, light, smell, taste, touch, the feeling in our environments, to separate what matters from what doesn't and prevent sensory overload when the brain can't filter the information coming in. Chaos ensues as a result. After pulling an all-nighter, that means going out all night, people may begin to anticipate things that aren't there, including objects. I talked about people seeing fire that isn't there earlier. So we lose clear stimuli sense. Risky decisions. When sleep-deprived people prepare to make economic decisions, the brain's reward center in the prefrontal cortex lights up, suggesting they expect to win. For example, make money. But when risky choices don't pan out, they don't have a positive result, people's brain activity decreases in the region related to punishment and aversion. The anterior insula, I believe that is, suggesting they don't care about losing money as much as they would on a good night's sleep. So it increases your choices, your risky choices, increases the number of risky choices that you're prepared to make or take in your life. And that's not good. Head in the clouds. We all lose focus, like me here, now and then. But brain activity linked to attention lapses changes when people sacrifice sleep. After a good night's rest, these lapses correspond to altered thalamus function and less active frontal and parietal networks, which basically mean we tune out when we're bored. But when sleep-deprived people space out, they also exhibit impaired visual sensory processing, suggesting a whole other level of disengagement with the world. In short, losing sleep turns you into Phoebe. Is that her name? From Friends? I don't know. I never watched it. Don't really get the self-interested style of that kind of humor. Anyway, what happens is that you lose focus, and it's difficult enough to focus anyway. If you've seen that experiment with count the number of passes made with a basketball around a group, and you focus and you focus and you focus and you count the number, and at the end they ask you the number and you present the number and they say, that's great, but did you see the character of Death walking across the basketball court? And you didn't, because you were focusing on the passes, and you go back and watch it again and the character of Death walks through the middle of the basketball court while people are playing basketball, and you didn't see it because you were focusing on the basketball all of the time. If you haven't seen that experiment, go to YouTube, watch it. It's a reminder that the invisible is more powerful than the visible within our life's experiences. That which we cannot see influences us much more than what we can see in terms of being aware of what is affecting us. So the last part is brain damage. Add all-nighters to the list of things that kill brain cells, including not drinking large amounts of alcohol and popping pills. In this case, in the brainstem, you're basically just killing yourself. This damage may be irreparable, making catching up on the lost sleep a poor excuse for snoozing till noon on the weekends. Yes, it's irreparable. And now, if you consider that brain development is related to environmental experiences and also nutrition and getting enough of the vitamins and minerals that you need into your body when you're young, especially iodine. If you don't get it when you're young, and those connections are not made when you're young, you can forget about being an intelligent adult basically. So you need it while you're young. You got to make those connections while you're young. You got to develop everything while you're young. The 3 basic ages of development are 0 to 5, 5 to 8, 8 to 12, and if you haven't developed it by the time you're 12, you can just about forget about it. Everyone's slightly different though, but that's the basis of it. Thank you very much for listening to this presentation about the brain and sleep. I hope this will encourage you to think a little bit more about what you do. I hope you'll follow some of the advice that I gave you. I hope you'll check out some of the links that I mentioned. And at the bottom you can see sources for the infographic, our research from the Journal of Neuroscience, International Scholarly Research Notes, and so on and so on and so on and so on. This has been another presentation in our NSA supplementary series for our students. It's called Useful Stuff because I hope it's stuff that you can find useful and apply it in your own life. If you've got any suggestions about things you'd like us to cover, let us know. If you like the video, let us know. You can link to us on all the usual networks, so please feel free to do that. Wherever you are, I hope you have a good day, and there'll be another short presentation soon, I hope. Wherever you are, take care.